The rain slammed against the cracked sidewalk as a man in worn clothes dragged a duffel bag toward a mansion worth $50 million. But he wasn't there to admire it. He was there to reclaim it. His name was Alexander Cole, and this mansion, he built it, paid for every marble floor, every chandelier, every security gate, now blocking his way. But tonight, nobody recognized him. Not the guards staring at him like trash. Not the son who just pulled up in a car worth more than most people's homes. Not even his own wife, watching coldly from a window inside, because Alexander Cole had returned as a stranger. The guard's voice cut through the rain. "State your business." Alexander kept his tone humble. "Broken even. I was told there's a maintenance job opening. Part-time caretaker work." The guard frowned. "This residence doesn't hire random walk-ins." Before Alexander could respond, tires screeched behind him. A luxury car door flew open, and Lucas Cole stepped out. Designer suit, expensive watch, zero patience. He didn't even glance at the man standing in the rain. "What's the delay?" Lucas snapped at the guard. "Open the gate faster next time. I have a meeting." The guard bowed. "Sorry, sir. This man claims he's here for a job." Lucas turned slowly. His eyes dragged over Alexander, head to muddy boots, like he was evaluating garbage. "Yeah? And why would we hire someone who looks like that?" The words landed like a slap. Alexander's jaw tightened, but years of discipline held him together. He had prepared for this. He knew what his own son had become. Lucas waved dismissively. "Tell him to leave. We don't need more useless people hanging around." The guard reached for the gate control, but a voice called out from the mansion steps. "Wait, who is that man?" Tia Cole appeared under an umbrella. Her tone wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. Just curious. "He says he's here about a caretaker position," the guard explained. Tia studied Alexander's face. Something flickered in her eyes. Not recognition, but something else. Compassion. "Who sent you?" she asked. Alexander's voice cracked deliberately. "A placement agency. They said someone here needed help with repairs. I really need the job." The pain in his voice was real. The story wasn't. Lucas scoffed. "Tia, don't tell me you're actually entertaining this." But Tia didn't move. "Let him in," she said firmly. "Mom's been complaining about broken pipes and loose railings for months. We always say we'll hire someone and never do." Lucas rolled his eyes but said nothing. The iron gate creaked open, and Alexander Cole stepped into his own mansion, like a ghost returning to haunt the family that forgot him. The marble floors, the tall glass windows, the massive chandelier. None of it felt like home anymore. Veronica Cole stood near the staircase, holding a tablet, reviewing event schedules. Her posture was elegant, controlled, almost rehearsed. "Who is this?" she asked without looking up. Tia answered, "A caretaker applicant. I thought we could try him for a week." Veronica finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes paused on Alexander. Not recognition, only judgment. "They sent someone older," she said flatly. "I can work hard," Alexander replied softly. "I don't complain. I just need stability." Lucas whispered under his breath, "Pathetic." Veronica sighed. "Fine. 1 week. Minimum pay. If he fails, send him away." Her phone rang, and she walked off before hearing his response. Rosa, the elderly housekeeper, approached carefully, studying Alexander's face with kindness. "Come with me. I'll show you the service quarters." As they walked down the hallway, Alexander glanced at the rooms that once belonged to him. Family portraits lined the walls, his younger self smiling among them. Yet none of them knew the man walking right past. Rosa lowered her voice. "You look tired. When was your last proper meal?" He swallowed. "A day or two." She nodded and touched his arm gently. "I'll bring you something after you settle in." Kindness. Real, humble kindness. He almost broke. The servant quarters were cramped and dim. A narrow bed. A single drawer. The air smelled of old dust and forgotten promises. "This will do," he murmured. Rosa gave him a sad smile. People like us don't get much space. But we make do. Then she paused. If anyone speaks to you harshly, ignore it. This house has changed. He nodded slowly. That was why he was here. Later that evening, he swept leaves from the patio as Lucas paced on a phone call. I don't care about what the news says, Lucas snapped. Dad's the one who ruined everything. If he hadn't disappeared after that financial mess. He stopped when he noticed Alexander nearby. What are you doing standing so close? Lucas snapped. This isn't story time. Finish your job. Alexander bowed his head and continued sweeping. But every word pierced him. Inside the living room, Veronica spoke to a friend on speakerphone. Yes, the collapse was humiliating, she said. If he ever shows his face again, I don't know if I could forgive him. His mistakes cost us everything. Alexander froze outside the window. Her voice held no grief, only resentment. Tia sat silently on the couch, staring at the floor. Her expression wasn't cruel, just distant, almost conflicted. Mom, he didn't fail on purpose, she whispered. Veronica sighed sharply. Naivety is not a virtue, Tia. We live with consequences. Alexander walked away before his heart betrayed him. Night fell. He sat alone on the small bed, hands trembling, tears fighting to escape. No one recognized him. But that had been the point, to see who they were without his wealth shielding their truth. And so far, their truth hurt more than anything he had ever built or lost. Morning light crept through the narrow window when Rosa knocked softly on the door. I brought you breakfast, she whispered, handing him a small tray with toast and tea. Eat before they start calling. Alexander thanked her gently. You're very kind. She smiled faintly. Kindness is all some of us can afford. Moments later, Lucas shouted from the balcony. Caretaker, get up here now. Alexander hurried upstairs. Lucas pointed at a cracked section of the railing. Fix this before noon. If my friends come over and see this mess, it'll be embarrassing. Alexander examined it carefully. It needs reinforcement. If someone leans on it, it could collapse. Lucas rolled his eyes. So, just make it look presentable. I don't care about the details. Tia walked in and overheard. Lucas, that's dangerous. If it breaks. Lucas cut her off. Relax. People will only take photos, not lean on it. Tia frowned. That's not the point. He scoffed. You always defend everyone except the people who actually matter. Alexander spoke quietly. Miss Tia is right. It could hurt someone. Lucas stared at him coldly. Did I ask for your opinion? Do the job. Don't lecture me. Alexander quietly got to work, holding back the storm inside his chest. Hours passed under the sun. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he refused to stop. As he tightened bolts, Tia approached with a small bottle of water. You should rest for a minute, she said softly. He accepted it with gratitude. Thank you. Lucas watched from a distance, annoyed. You're too soft, Tia. That's why people walk over us. She shook her head. Treating people like humans won't break us. Lucas laughed bitterly. Dad treated everyone kindly, and look where that got him. Alexander's grip tightened on the wrench. Later that afternoon, Veronica gathered event planners in the living room, rehearsing guest lists and sponsorship deals. Alexander cleaned quietly in the corner as they spoke. We must avoid questions about the scandal, Veronica said. People already pity us enough. One planner replied, Will your husband be present? Her expression hardened. He is absent. Alexander felt a chill. Absent, as if he had never existed at all. After the meeting, Veronica walked past him without acknowledgement. But when he accidentally bumped the mop bucket, a small drop of water splashed near her heel. She snapped instantly. Watch where you're going. He bowed his head. I'm sorry. She glared. If you ruin my shoes, your pay will be deducted. Rosa rushed over. Ma'am, it was an accident. Veronica cut her off sharply. Don't make excuses for incompetence. Rosa's eyes dimmed, but she stayed silent. Alexander swallowed the ache rising in his chest. He had once bought those shoes for her, not because of luxury, but because she had admired them quietly years ago. Back then, her smile had been genuine. Now, there was only ice. Evening approached. Alexander helped Rosa in the kitchen as she arranged supplies. "You've worked here long?" he asked gently. "Many years," she replied softly. "Long enough to remember when this house was warmer." He paused. "What changed?" She sighed. "Wealth doesn't only build walls. Sometimes it builds distance." He stared at the tiled floor, feeling the weight of her words. "I heard they speak harshly about the owner," he said carefully. Rosa nodded sadly. "They blame him for the scandal, but they forget what he did for them." "What did he do?" he whispered. She smiled faintly, nostalgic. "When my husband fell ill, hospital bills would have drowned us. The master paid quietly and told me never to mention it. He paid school fees for drivers' children, built housing for workers' families back in their villages." She paused. "He never asked for gratitude, only trust." Alexander looked away, eyes burning. Rosa continued softly. "But people forget kindness when comfort becomes normal." The house fell silent for a while. Then thunder echoed in the distance. A storm rolled in fast, dark clouds swallowing the sky. Heavy rain poured across the courtyard, lightning flashing. Veronica appeared at the doorway, irritated. "The backyard is flooding. Someone needs to clear the drains before water reaches the guest hall." Her eyes locked on Alexander. "You. Go." Rosa stepped forward. "Ma'am, the storm is too strong. He could slip." Veronica dismissed her. "The event tomorrow costs more than his entire month of pay. Let him earn it." Alexander nodded quietly and stepped into the rain. Cold water soaked through his clothes instantly. Wind whipped against him as he knelt to clear debris from the gutters. His hands trembled, breath heavy, but he pushed through. He wasn't just enduring the storm. He was watching how far they'd go. Lucas appeared at the balcony, sheltered and dry, sipping a drink. "Move faster," he shouted. "It's not complicated." Alexander struggled to lift a blocked grate. His knees scraped against the pavement. The rain hammered harder. Lucas laughed. "Unbelievable. Even work like this is too hard for him." Rosa's voice cried from inside. "Please, let him come in." Veronica answered coldly. "He finishes what he starts." Lightning flashed again. Alexander slipped, catching himself at the last second. His chest tightened. Suddenly, footsteps rushed toward him. Tia knelt beside him in the rain, shivering. "That's enough," she said urgently. "You're freezing." He shook his head. "Miss your mother." "I don't care," she whispered. "You're human." She draped her jacket over his shoulders and helped him steady himself. Lucas scoffed from above. "Of course. Tia and her charity cases." She glared upward. "At least I still have a heart." Alexander stared at her, a quiet, aching gratitude swelling inside him. Tia guided him toward shelter. "I'll bring you something warm," she murmured. For the first time since returning, he felt hope flicker faintly in the darkness. But hope couldn't erase what he had seen. He had witnessed arrogance, cruelty, selfishness carved into comfort. And tonight, he realized this test was no longer about observing them. It was about deciding what to do with the truth. Steam rose gently from the cup as Tia placed it in front of him in the small service kitchen. "Drink this," she said softly. "It'll warm you up." Alexander wrapped his trembling hands around the mug. "Thank you, Miss Tia. You didn't have to." She hesitated. "Someone should." Her voice sounded heavy, as if kindness had become a rebellion rather than a norm in this house. Lucas stormed in, irritation loud in every movement. "What is this?" he snapped. "You're seriously babysitting the help now?" Tia didn't look up. He was out there in a lightning storm. He could have been hurt. Lucas scoffed. "So, workers get paid to endure things. That's how the world works." Alexander watched silently. Tia lifted her eyes. "No, Lucas, that's how you decided to see it." He rolled his eyes. Don't start. Rosa stepped in just then, placing a towel over Alexander's shoulders protectively. This man deserves respect, storm or not. Lucas snapped back. Stay out of family matters, Rosa. She went quiet, but her eyes didn't. Alexander spoke gently. Please don't argue on my behalf. Lucas smirked. See? He understands his place. The words hit like a blade. Tia's jaw tightened. And someday, you'll understand yours. Silence filled the room. Lucas left with a dismissive scoff. Tia exhaled shakily. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Alexander studied her face. You don't seem like the others. She smiled sadly. Maybe because I still remember who he used to be. His chest tightened. Who he used to be. He wanted to tell her everything. Who he really was. How much he had watched her grow. How much hope he'd placed in her heart. But this test wasn't done. Later that night, voices echoed from the main hall. Veronica spoke sharply, her frustration sharp and brittle. Lucas, we need to liquidate the Miami property. The scandal has damaged everything. Lucas groaned. And live like normal people? No way. Veronica shot back. We do not survive by shrinking. We survive by pretending nothing is wrong. Tia stood near the stairs, arms folded. Mom, survival shouldn't be an act. Veronica turned slowly. What do you suggest? Cry in public? Apologize? Your father embarrassed us. Tia swallowed. He made mistakes, but he's still our family. Veronica's voice turned to ice. Family doesn't destroy everything you built. Alexander stood in the shadows, listening, invisible in plain sight. Lucas spoke bitterly. If Dad walked in right now, I would tell him exactly what he deserves to hear. Alexander's breath caught. Tia lowered her gaze. If he walked in right now, I'd ask if he was okay. Veronica shook her head, disappointed. You're too naive. Tia replied softly. No, I'm just not heartless yet. The argument dissolved into silence. Hours later, the household slept. But Alexander could not. He sat on the small edge of his narrow bed, memories flashing behind weary eyes. Laughter shared at the dinner table, holiday mornings, whispered gratitude, dreams spoken into late nights. Where had it gone? What had Welf replaced? He pressed his hand over his heart, fighting the ache crushing his chest. Maybe this test wasn't only for them. Maybe it was for him, too. The next afternoon, a group of Veronica's high-class acquaintances visited. The mansion buzzed with shallow excitement. Laughter filled the air, but it felt hollow, rehearsed. Alexander polished the hallway floor, quietly, as Veronica greeted the guests. So sorry about everything you're going through, one woman said sweetly. It must be devastating, losing status like that. Veronica forced a smile. We're coping. It was his mess, but I refused to collapse with him. Tia stood nearby, visibly uncomfortable. One woman glanced toward Alexander. Oh, you've hired someone new? He looks rough. Veronica's lips tightened. Temporary help. We're cutting costs. The women laughed softly. Alexander kept wiping the floor, pretending not to hear every word. Lucas strutted by, purposely bumping his shoulder into him. Watch where you're going. Alexander steadied himself quietly. Rosa whispered near his ear. Don't let them break your spirit. He nodded faintly. Later, while the guests were still inside, Veronica called out sharply. Caretaker, move these boxes upstairs. Now. They were heavy. Too heavy. He lifted them anyway. Halfway up the stairs, his legs shook. Lucas rolled his eyes. Unbelievable. Even a small task is too much. Tia rushed forward. Stop. He's going to fall. But her warning came too late. Alexander stumbled, the box slipping from his arms, crashing across the steps. The sound echoed through the hall. The guests gasped. Lucas exploded. You idiot. Veronica's face flushed with fury. Do you understand how much those decorations cost? Alexander caught his breath, shaken. I'm sorry. Lucas shoved him lightly on the shoulder. People like you don't belong in places like this. Tia grabbed Lucas' arm. Don't touch him. Rosa stepped in front of Alexander protectively. He could have been seriously hurt. Veronica's voice cut through the air like glass. If he can't handle basic tasks, fire him. The words froze the room. Rosa's voice trembled. Please don't do this. Alexander stood still, silent, bleeding inside. Tia stared at her mother in shock. You're firing him? After everything you've made him do? Veronica looked away. Weak employees drag households down. Alexander's lips parted slowly. Weak. Drag. Disposable. Lucas crossed his arms. Send him out tonight. No severance. Rosa whispered, heartbroken. That is not fair. Veronica replied coldly. Life isn't fair. The room fell quiet. Alexander felt the world tilt. Not because they had rejected him, but because now their true nature was undeniable. He straightened his back. His voice changed, steady, composed. There is something I must say before I leave. They turned toward him. Their eyes weren't seeing a worker anymore. They were looking at a man who no longer bit. Lucas scoffed. Just go. We don't need your speech. Tia whispered, shaken. Let him speak. Alexander nodded softly. He had seen enough. The test was ending, and what he was about to reveal would change everything they thought they knew. His words lingered in the silence like thunder waiting to break. The guests stared. Lucas scoffed but shifted uneasily. Veronica crossed her arms, trying to look unaffected, but there was a flicker, irritation mixed with something she couldn't name. Alexander lifted his gaze slowly. I have worked in many homes, he said softly. I have seen wealthy families, kind ones, cruel ones, broken ones. But this house, he paused. This house is the coldest I have ever known. Lucas stepped forward. Watch your mouth. Tia stood frozen, breath tight, eyes trembling. Veronica straightened. You are a temporary employee. You do not get to judge us. Alexander nodded faintly. You're right. I don't. His voice deepened. But a husband does. The room shifted. The guests exchanged confused whispers. Lucas frowned. What did you just say? Alexander looked at Veronica. Directly. For the first time since he returned. Her breath hitched, only for a second, before she forced composure. Enough. Leave this property. He took a step forward. Lightning cracked outside the window. My name is Alexander Cole. Rosa gasped and covered her mouth. Tia staggered backward, tears welling instantly. Lucas froze, color draining from his face. Veronica's hand trembled, barely noticeable, but she tightened it into a fist. That's not funny, Lucas muttered. Dad is. I am your father, Alexander said quietly. And I have been standing in my own home, as a stranger, watching the truth you live when you think I do not exist. Nobody spoke. Even the guests forgot to breathe. Tia whispered, voice shaking. Dad? He turned toward her with aching gentleness. Yes, Tia. She rushed forward, then stopped halfway, guilt crashing in her chest. Her lips trembled. Why didn't you tell us? His eyes glistened. Because people reveal who they are when they believe no one is watching. Lucas snapped out of shock, and anger swallowed his fear. This is manipulation. You tricked us. You humiliated us. Alexander looked at him calmly. No, son. I gave you an opportunity to show your heart. Lucas' jaw clenched. You disappeared. You ruined everything. You made us lose respect. I lost money, Alexander said firmly. You lost compassion. Silence cracked through the room. He turned slowly toward Veronica. She stood tall, but cracks ran through the mask now. Every memory between them hung between their eyes. You blame me for failure, he said softly. But failure did not change you. His voice shook. Wealth did. Veronica swallowed. Her voice came out brittle. You left us to face humiliation alone. You hid. You chose pride over family. I chose to protect you, Alexander replied quietly. I took the fall to shield you from legal scrutiny. I paid debts in silence. I absorbed blame because I loved you. Her breath faltered. The truth broke something inside her, not loudly, but deeply. He looked at Rosa. You were the only one who remembered kindness. Rosa burst into tears. I never forgot who you were, she whispered. He nodded gratefully, then faced his children again. When I returned, I hoped to see strength, resilience, unity. His words trembled. Instead, I saw cruelty, arrogance, disdain for those you believe beneath you. Lucas shook his head. You're twisting everything. We were surviving. Alexander's voice hardened. For the first time, survival does not require stepping on others. Lucas opened his mouth, but no words came out. He wasn't used to being seen, truly seen. Tia's tears streamed freely. Dad, I tried to defend you. I didn't know how to fix anything. I didn't want to lose what made us human. He placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. You were the only one who passed this test. She broke into sobs, collapsing into his arms, clinging to him like the child who once waited for him at the gate after work. Lucas flinched, jealousy and shame battling behind his eyes. Veronica's lips trembled. Why come back like this? She whispered. His answer was almost broken. Because I needed to know whether I had built a family. His voice fractured, or a kingdom of strangers. No one spoke. The truth pressed down on every corner of the room. The guests shifted uncomfortably, exposed spectators to a life stripped bare, then quietly excused themselves, slipping away one by one until only the family remained. Alexander straightened. I will not force myself into a home where kindness no longer lives. Lucas stepped forward in panic. You're leaving? Alexander nodded slowly. Yes. Veronica's composure shattered. Years of suppressed grief cracking open. Don't walk away. He looked at her long and hard. You already did. The weight of her own words, spoken carelessly over months, came crashing back like a mirror, finally showing every ugly truth she'd refused to face. Lucas' anger collapsed into desperation. So what, you punish us? You abandon us again. Alexander shook his head gently. No, Lucas. I'm giving you the one thing money could never buy. He paused. Consequence. The word echoed through the room like thunder. He turned to Rosa, the woman who had shown him more kindness in 2 weeks than his own family had in years. You will receive the full deed to the staff housing program. Your family, and the workers I once promised security, will have it permanently. Rosa's knees buckled. Tears poured down her face. Sir, I don't. He smiled softly. You earned it, Rosa. You saw me. You treated me like a human being when no one else did. Then he turned to Tia, his daughter, the only one who'd shown him mercy. You still know how to care for people, Tia. You still see hearts, not bank accounts. Her voice cracked. I don't want your money, Dad. I can't lose you again. He kissed her forehead gently, the way he used to when she was small. You won't, because you passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. Then he faced Lucas. The silence between father and son felt endless. Lucas' voice broke for the first time in his life. What about me? Alexander's eyes were steady, but drowning in sorrow. You will work, Lucas. You'll start at the bottom, the way I once did. Not because I hate you. He swallowed hard, but because you never learned that every person, no matter how poor, how broken, has value. Lucas didn't argue. He didn't shout. For the first time in his life, he felt small. Finally, Veronica stepped closer, hands trembling, mascara streaked. And me? She whispered. Alexander looked at the woman he'd once loved more than anything. You have to decide, Veronica. Did you love the man I was, or only the life I gave you? Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but no answer came, because deep down, she already knew. Alexander lifted his duffel bag, the same one he'd arrived with, not as a billionaire, not as a beggar, but as a man who'd finally chosen truth over comfort. Tia's voice broke through her sobs. Dad, please come back when we're better. He turned back one last time. His smile was tired, but real. If you become better, Tia, I won't need to come back. He stepped out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped. The world felt quieter now. He didn't leave in anger. He left with grief and the quiet courage to let truth stand on its own. And somewhere, deep inside that broken, beautiful house, seeds of change finally began to stir. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Would you have the courage to walk away from everything to teach the people you love a lesson they'll never forget? Hit that like button if you believe in consequences over comfort, and subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we know about family, loyalty, and the price of truth. Because sometimes the greatest wealth we can gain is the lesson we didn't see coming.